It's time to get an update at what's going on with 2028, and this video is going to focus on the Dems. As of now, it looks like Kamala Harris has sank and Gavin Newsom is taking her place. We'll look at some of the candidates, the polling, etc. We can do the Republicans in a different video, but as of now, it looks like the field for the Dems could be a lot more competitive. And this article from NBC News says Kamala Harris's commentary on other Democrats jumpstarts the 2028 presidential contest. So Harris is on her book tour talking about her time she became the nominee up until the election. And it looks like she's coming out relatively swinging at some of the different prominent potential candidates for 28. And having a competitive primary in 28 is exactly what the Dems need. No more rallying around one candidate before there's really any debates and sorting out the ideas of which direction the party should go. So we've seen Harris going after Josh Shapiro as well as Pete Buttigieg. Apparently she thinks his identity is just not enough for the American people to handle. So in order to prove that point, she decided to not pick him as her running mate due to his identity. Kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy there. And you might think, yeah, this country is so horrible, they can never accept Harris and Buttigieg on the ticket. There's always going to be a segment of those people, just like the segment of people that would absolutely love to come out and vote specifically for those identities. But if Harris didn't use Buttigieg because he's gay, would it also have been okay for Biden to say, I'm not going to pick Harris as my running mate because of her identity and America's not ready for it? Sounds similar to me, and that kind of thinking would be terrible if you're so fixated on the identity and you think that the politics are just totally secondary. Look what Trump did with J.D. Vance. Didn't seem like he was too concerned with picking a different identity or background as his running mate. And look at that, it all worked out for him. And it also didn't come off as token. So everybody's got their own take on balancing the ticket. But after Harris took the loss, she de facto became the frontrunner for 28, at least until somebody better rises to the top. So I do hope the Democrats actually battle it out. I hope the same for the Republicans as well. If it's just going to be J.D. Vance and no question about it, I don't think that's going to be a good idea either. So let's get on Wikipedia and see who some of the potential candidates might be. But even before that, take note of what happened here with the Iowa caucus. The DNC voted to strip it of its first-in-the-nation presidential caucus. That's a whole other battle for this party. They got to decide what order of states they actually want to conduct business in. But anyway, the candidates listed here are the ones that have expressed interest as of now. Now, given it's so far off, absolutely anything could happen. But if you're going to go past that surface level analysis, some of these candidates have absolutely no chance. Josh Green in Hawaii. I follow politics and I still know almost nothing about him. Gina Raimondo, I don't think it's going to be her. Ro Khanna is an interesting choice. He's going to be more on the progressive side. And on the other side, you've got Andy Beshear of Kentucky. He's going to be more moderate or maybe even conservative by some. And Dems have got to have that internal battle. Are they going to go more progressive or are they going to go more moderate and establishment? You might think that the bigger, broader issue is going to be money in politics or politicians being controlled by corporate interests. I do think that's a problem. I don't know if it's ever going to change. But going beyond that, I don't think Andy Beshear would be able to win in a primary. That's totally different than a general election. But even in a general election, the era of the Southern Democrat on the national stage might have passed. Beshear would probably be a good running mate or a cabinet pick, but I think he's a little bit too mild. Buttigieg does seem to be kind of high profile. People talk all the time about how he's well-spoken or whatever. I do think he's pretty corporate friendly, and I do think he's kind of a chameleon politically. I don't think progressives are going to be a fan of him, but he's going to be in the thick of things. Ro Khanna, I think, would be a better candidate if his profile was a little bit higher. He's just a U.S. rep, but you never know what can happen. Then you've got Stephen A. Smith. It's kind of the wild card, dark horse candidate, similar to Jon Stewart. It's easy to dismiss Smith as not being serious, similar to how Donald Trump was viewed when he first ran more than 10 years ago. To me, Smith seems to be a candidate that tackles some of the more pragmatic issues that the Democrats seem to have lost touch on with the American people. That's more going to be on the cultural side of things. That's what I see as the weakness of Dems, but they're usually going to be better on most, but not all of the economic issues. Anyway, we don't have time to go over every single candidate. We can go down here and see more potential candidates. And look at this cast of characters right here. Some of them are definitely going to run, others they're going to fizzle out and have no interest. So far, what I expected to see happen has happened, and that was Harris leading most of the polling, but over time she's going to end up sinking. That makes perfect sense. After the election, she's going to be the highest profile candidate. I've covered what I think of Harris before in other videos. I just don't think she's really a strong candidate at all. She's got a lot of issues and she already took a loss on the national stage. I think there's a lot to go after her on, including her time in the Biden administration. when it looked like his mental health was declining. And she was the VP, but she really didn't say anything about it until way after the fact. So that's not a good look, but she's going to be stronger than some of these other candidates on here. I don't think Amy Klobuchar really has a chance. I think Jon Ossoff might be an interesting pick, but he might wait another 1 or 2 elections and he'd stay in the Senate in Georgia for the time being. AOC is another potential high-profile candidate. It seems like she would have a better chance than Ro Khanna, who was the other progressive candidate above. I've said a bunch about AOC in other videos. She came in as the progressive outsider looking to shake things up, but then way too many times she just cozied up to the establishment. Now that the Dems are the opposition party once again, she might again try to ramp up the populist rhetoric. But again, I think it's going to be better for her to focus on economic issues. The cultural side, there's going to be some issues there. Pritzker, I think, would be a reasonable candidate to get in this race. He's got a ton of money. He's got a ton of connections. Maybe he tries to bridge that gap between more establishment and more progressive. And you've got Josh Shapiro here. He seems like a reasonably strong candidate. He's from the key swing state. He's got high approval ratings. He's a guy that's just kind of hard to hate. He could be a little bit too mild and a little bit too bland. I'm not even sure if he's interested, but I think Shapiro could be a decent pick if he decides to get in. But the main thing here is going to be Gavin Newsom at the top right. His star has risen over the past few months. That's since he's taken a more combative social media approach with satire and trying to troll Trump. That's been good for him to serve as an oppositional figure to Trump and the Republicans. But the social media antics are, I think, the same thing that is the weakness for Trump. That's going to help a little bit with the base, but the broader public is not really into it. Even a lot of Republicans I've seen many times, they say that Trump's tweets are kind of cringe sometimes and they wish he would kind of rein it in. So trying to be like Trump and be more of a jerk, I don't really think is the answer. And before that, there was some buzz around how he's kind of tracking a little bit toward the center, especially on some of the social and cultural issues. On his podcast, he had some conservative guests, and he sounded much more moderate on some of the trans issues. So it looks like he was trying to win over some disaffected Trump voters. But ever since California tried to redistrict after Texas and some of that social media stuff, I think almost no Trump Republicans are going to have any interest in Newsom. Even regular Republicans are going to be extremely skeptical at best. But I think it's almost certain that Newsom is going to run. He's young enough, he's from a high-profile state. He's got all kinds of political connections, and he seems to know how to navigate a lot of the political issues. But how sincere is he? And how about his vulnerabilities as governor of California? It's not exactly a state that everybody's trying to move to. We'll have to see just how politically savvy he is as time goes on. If we go down here and take a look at the polling, right now in the aggregate from race to the White House, Newsom is in the lead at about 25%. He's now eclipsed Harris, who's at about 21.5%. Buttigieg is down there at 10, AOC is at 8, Shapiro is at 4, and then down from there. So that's just one aggregate. With the individual polls, it's kind of back and forth. Harris does still lead a bunch of these, but Newsom leads others. You've even got Tim Walz here leading one of these, where he's tied at 15. If you go back to the older polls, you could see Harris was leading every one of them pretty much up until April. And just in California, of course, Harris and Newsom from the same state. Newsom has been leading those polls, although he's only in the mid-20s. So I thought it was inevitable Harris would sink, and it started to happen. But polls this far out are volatile. Newsom is in the news a lot. That's going to help his profile. If something else happens to a different candidate, that could change things in a hurry. But between Harris and Newsom, it's clear I think Newsom is a better candidate across the board. He's probably better in every way, from his experience to his personality to his style of speaking. It's going to be Newsom. Now, I know there are some diehard Harris fans out there. That's not going to change. That's always going to be there. I think it's unlikely she'd be the nominee, but she should definitely compete in a primary. She did it back in 2020. She should do it again. But with her baggage, I just don't see it happening. Every candidate is going to have some weakness, so you never know what can happen. It could be a candidate that's not remotely on the radar whatsoever. It's got to be somebody that has at least a reasonably significant amount of appeal in both a primary and a general. It's tough to do, and somebody's got to be the nominee. I don't think we're really going to get serious here until we get at least after the midterms. That's more than a year out. But for more on who's leading the pack, here's the Real Clear Politics average. And this also has Newsom leading by 5.5. He's at 25.5. Harris is at 20. Then Buttigieg is at about 12. AOC is at 8. Not too far from what we just saw. And down below, I do want to point out that they have no picture of Pritzker here. And this picture of Newsom is different than the ones I've seen in every other context. I'm not even sure what that picture is from. It almost doesn't even look like him. But it is what it is, and Newsom's star is shining pretty high at the current moment. Now, the other thing to take a look at here is where people are putting their money. Here's Polymarket, Democratic presidential nominee 2028. Newsom right now is leading. He's at about 36%. And you can see how he started to really go up here in mid-August. Before that, everybody was kind of bunched up together. But you'll notice that Harris is not really even on here. Down below, AOC is in second place at 11%, and Buttigieg at 6%. Harris is under that, and she's tied at 4%. That tells you a lot about where people are actually willing to spend money. And it's not on Harris becoming the nominee. That ship has totally sailed. They even have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on here at 3%. You've got Stephen A. Smith and Jon Stewart at 2%. This whole thing is completely fluid. What you're going to want to focus on is who's in the top 2 or 3 slots. And then if anybody has shot up maybe 4 or 5% over the past couple of weeks, that could be somebody that's in the news, and maybe they have momentum to actually become a top contender. The last one we'll do here is predict it. And this is going to be similar to what we just saw here. Newsom is at 32 cents. AOC is in second at 12. Buttigieg at 8. Pritzker and Westmore are tied at 6. And then it's going to be down from there. Harris here is also at 4 cents. And if you look at the timeline here, again, Newsom has gone up. About mid-August, he went up. It's not overwhelming, but in a crowded field, going up 10 to 12% is notable. So that's kind of where we're at with the Dems right now. First, they have to grapple with why they lost in 24. Are they likely to really make any changes? Probably only a little at most. I think they're mostly going to rely on there being enough opposition to Trump and the Republicans. And they're just going to say, hey, we're not Trump, vote for us. I think that's pathetic, but that could work. It kind of happened like that back in 2020. I think Dems will kind of ignore some of the unpopular cultural positions that they have. And I think they'll kind of play up some of the weaknesses of the Republicans. That could be inflation. It could be the economy. It could be Medicaid and healthcare. In a close race, that could sway it by 1 or 2%, and that could be the whole election. So the bottom line here is I think the Dems need a big shakeup. They've got to get some progressives in there, some outsiders to go against the establishment, let everybody fight out their ideas and see who wins. People do not want the status quo. That's a big reason that Trump's in there right now. And even though Trump is not super popular, he's not exactly unpopular either. And the favorability of the Dems is pretty much in the toilet. And if you go down the list of the specific issues on which party you trust more, the Dems do have a few of them, but I've seen the Republicans have more. So the Dems really have to do a lot better. I don't know who the candidate's going to be, but as of now, it looks like Newsom is the current frontrunner, and Harris is kind of on her way out. That is, unless this book tour reignites her campaign. So for now, that's a look at what's going on with the 2028 Dems. Let me know in the comments, what do you think the party has to do for success in 28? What do you think they're going to do right, and how do you think they're going to blow it? And you don't have to like any of these candidates, but which one do you think is the most likely to become the nominee? Who do you think has strong appeal in both a primary and a general? Let me know any of your thoughts about any of these candidates down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to help support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.